Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. This is a live event, a surprise live event. How do we help our children? This is part 2 of what is wrong with our children. Again, good morning, and nice to see you all. It's a beautiful, wet, rainy, doesn't feel like spring, close to 0 day here in Armstrong. So we were talking about what is wrong with our children, and first of all, we have to, and this came up with a conversation with a dear friend of ours who was over yesterday, and we have to talk about what's been going on energetically for this period that we're in right now. And I don't know about other people, but hello, Jennifer. Nice to see you. Oh, look, and Kelly's here too. Since he's sitting just over there, I'm kind of hoping she's there. Sometimes, anyways. Can always tell when she's not present. She begins to fade out. Oh, there she goes. So, and we were talking about the energy that's going on, and I have to admit, the last 4 days for me have been really, it's been this really big vibration that's amplifying a lot of things. So I've been a little more maybe passionate than normal, and sometimes a little more direct. Let's just say the tiger has been stalking around in the jungle for a bit, and part of it's the energy that's going on right now. And we were talking with our dear friend Sharon, who came over yesterday, and the one thing I love about Sharon is that she is so open, and unlike a lot of people, she doesn't personalize the discussions and the passions that come up in the discussions. Either do I, and it's a blessing. But it was so funny because I could see Kelly looking at the two of us, and Kelly has real issues with that sort of thing. She sees everything as conflict and takes it too personally. So she was kind of looking like a deer caught in the headlights as Sharon and I kind of battled back and forth. But the thing is to me, that's fun. That is oh, and Jackie's here too. Hello, Jackie. Nice to see you. So to me, that sort of thing is fun. We are passionate about what we think about. We're passionate about what we believe and know, and that's not an issue. The issue comes in when you personalize it too much, and you begin to make judgments on yourself and on the other person for what they feel or think in the discussion. And Kelly brought up a good point, and I'm going to talk about this because I am guilty of this. And I finally came to the conclusion last night that my wife was absolutely right with this. I have this ability to feel. It's really hard to put into words, but the only way I can say it is this, and Kelly will verify this, and so will anyone else who knows this personally. Yesterday, the girls were inside here talking, and I was outside, and I picked up on their thought processes right away, and I opened the door to the house, and I said, "Oh, Sharon, make sure we get the dimensions for the desk." And they both laughed, and they said, "Well, we're just doing that right now." And it's like, well, of course you are. This is the sort of thing that I do. And what happens with me is, before the person articulates it, I've got it. Their mind thinks it, and I've got it. I know exactly what they're going to say. And this is devastating to some people, and me, in my desire to further the conversation, will often unintentionally cut them off from the verbal expression, because it's like they're repeating themselves, and I don't recognize it. I don't catch in my mind that it's okay. You heard their thoughts, and now they want to vocalize that because they're expecting the need to vocalize it. but I will cut them off. I'll do that. I'll go, I already know what you're going to say, and I'll spit it out for them. Or I'll say, no, you're going in the wrong direction. And they'll go, well, how do you know? And I keep forgetting that it's not the norm yet. But listen, we're all capable of this. You know, the one thing I have to emphasize 100% is that there is nothing unique and nothing special about me. No more unique and no more special than each and every one of us. You know, we're all unique and special. But the overall talents and abilities that we all have access to are limitless. And there is no meter to measure which talent has more value. They all have value. They're all unique, one-of-a-kind expressions. And for that, I do apologize to all our friends who know us personally and come over. You know, my wife and I talked about last night in her usual, you know, non-combative, don't want to, you know, step on the tiger's tail routine, which is really not the way to be living. I keep saying to her, you know, move out of the fear and just have the discussion. Be open and honest. Tell me what you really want to say. You know, and for me, it's a realization that I have to catch myself and realize that to the other person, they are not repeating themselves. They're saying it for the first time. And I have to learn to hear that. In this current energetic state, there's a lot of people, you know, and Sharon brought this up too. She's like, you know, it's like I'm feeling there's something more I got to be doing. There's something there, and this falls right into the how do we help thing, okay? Regardless of whether it's our children or any other member of our society, and we're going to talk about all of that this morning. Well, one of the things she brought up is, you know, I have this feeling, this like there's something, there's a humming going on. And the more sensitive you are, and again, we're not talking better or lesser than, we're just talking a degree of sensitivity at the current state of consciousness that you're in, the more that feeling is going to affect your physical existence on every level. And I've talked about this one time before, quite a few months ago, so we'll do a quick recap here. But, you know, if we examine deer, for example, hours prior to a seismic event, an earthquake, or a similar seismic event, deer will, sometimes up to 6 to 8 hours before, will leave the area. They know, they feel it inside them that something's coming. And they'll leave the area. So will all the other animals, the ones that are worried about it anyways. We as human beings would love to think we're separate from nature, and of course we're not. So what happens is we don't recognize those natural communications that something's wrong, something's up, there's a change in the air, there's a charge. There's this feeling in my mind of almost expectant waiting. And I feel an immense number of conscious entities from all over the universe here, watching, waiting, hoping. You know, our species is indeed reaching that choice point again. We're reaching that opportunity where we can blossom forward in conscious awakening and usher in a whole new era where every one of us is cared for, where survival is no longer in doubt, where your energy and time can be spent on the expression of what you love, and that will be the gift you will give and the joy you will take. It all begins with us. It all begins with our choice. And you know, when we were talking with her friend yesterday, you know, she had made a comment that it all starts with the parents when it comes to what's wrong with the children. And I had said, you know, I believe I had mentioned those same words, but that's wrong, really. When we look at it deeper, when we go beyond that, it is our society and the way we've been living our lives for generations now. And to blame anyone ultimately doesn't serve us. I mean, the one thing about blame is it never gives a direction. It never gives a course. It never gives an action. It just says, well, it's your fault. And that's about where blame ends. So, if there must be blame, well, collectively, we all own the blame. As a society, as the human race. We own the blame, and as we talked yesterday with Sharon, Sharon had said, well, I don't think in our lifetimes we'll ever see that unification, and I would love to believe otherwise. I have a sneaky suspicion she's probably right. But I hold out hope, no matter what, until the last second. And it is not hope that the human race will not be destroyed. We will not be destroyed. We will have our collective butts kicked back to the Stone Age, however. Most people don't understand. We have mined so deeply into the earth now for materials that if we were to lose electrical power across the planet, for example, to not have the ability to produce electrical power, a massive Carrington event, a massive solar flare, would do exactly that. It would take over a decade to restore power across the planet. We would literally be shoved back into the Stone Age. Quite literally. And none of these things are bad things. Yes, we will get there. As Jennifer says, that time will come eventually. It really will. But we have an opportunity right now to forward that, and we forward that through our own conscious awareness, our own conscious growth, and understanding how to apply that conscious awareness in a world that's vastly asleep. And we're going to talk about the children as well. We're going to start here with a picture of the food that we were talking about during that video. Kelly was making this South African soup right here. And this soup has sweet potato in it, and fresh kale, and tomatoes, and the list goes on, and chicken, and it has a little bit of a chili heat to it, and it is an incredible soup. And then these are the homemade pumpkin scones that Kelly makes with our own pumpkin puree from our own pumpkins that we lobotomize and puree. So just thought I would give everyone a little look-see at that. We're going to talk about what it means to actually help people, and this is the core of the subject today. And I have a list here of talking points on my left side of the screen that we're going to go through. And of course, if there are questions or comments, please don't hesitate to put them up, and we'll address those as well. So, helping others does not mean enabling harmful behavior. Now, this is a really tricky one. Let's say, for example, you are a woman in a marriage who is being abused by your husband. Now, that abuse may be, and the reason I'm picking this is it's quite prevalent still in this day and age. The abuse may be psychological. In other words, it may be affecting your emotional and mental state. There may be no physical abuse involved, or it may be physical or a combination of all of those. That woman, in order to help herself and help the husband, must stop enabling the behavior to continue. Now, we say, well, how is the woman enabling the behavior to continue? She's still there. That's what's enabling the behavior to continue. So how would you help the husband? You would help the husband by leaving the husband. Now, there are shades of this that we can talk about. But what we're talking about ultimately here is where the first time communication that behavior is not acceptable makes no difference and the behavior continues. And really, no matter how many times someone says they love you to you after they've harmed you, that's not love. It's not. One of the first and most difficult things to understand about helping others is we must be raw and real and objective in our honest looking at the situation. And sometimes the best thing to do is to take yourself out and drop someone else in, and then ask yourself what you would tell them. For example, with Kelly, I've said to her, I said, okay, if you had a friend who behaved like this, what would you do in relation to this friend? And she says, well, I would let that friend know that their behavior was not acceptable, and if it continued, I would no longer entertain them in my circle of energy. That is helping. Now, it does not mean that you have to throw that person to the curb for the rest of your days, but what it means is the abuse, the enabling, the harmful enabling behavior has to stop, and it has to stop right now. It is only then when it is clear and cut that behavior is not acceptable and harmful to not only the individual but the person that is being perpetrated on, is there room for recognition of that harmful behavior from the person doing it, and the opportunity to adjust that behavior. Notice the word opportunity. When we say we want to help people, we're going to actually skip to point number 3 here, and we'll come back to addicts after the fact. We always have to be mindful that we understand what help is truly needed. You see, it's really, and I'll use these examples because I've worked with a lot of the homeless people in Vernon, the larger community that I used to live in, about 35,000 people now, way too big for my liking. Armstrong has about 5,000 and change. I really like it. Nice and small, little farming community. A person on the street that you would see sitting down by the downtown Shoppers Drug Mart in Vernon, and the mission, the organization that runs, they provide food for a couple hundred people a day, 3 times a day, clothing, access to counselors and that sort of thing. So, in Vernon, there's no such thing as someone who goes hungry. There's always the opportunity to have food. It's actually quite wonderful. So we see that person sitting by the side of the Shoppers Drug Mart, and they ask us for $10 because they're hungry. Now, it may be convenient just to hand the $10 off and walk away. But believe it or not, what you're actually doing is you're enabling the behavior to continue. Now, we have to be careful about this. The reason I'm saying this is because in Vernon, there is no need to beg for money in order to eat. It's never for food. It's not. I've experimented with this. I said, you know what, I'm not going to give you cash, but I'll take you down a Subway and I'll buy you a 6-inch sub. All I have is my debit card. And they don't want to get up and go get the sub because it's not really for the sub. What they want the money for is for the next drug fix or the next bottle of booze. The next thing that's going to numb the pain and the suffering they perceive they're in where they're at in their existence. So how do we truly help that person? We need to show that person that they are loved and cared for. And we do that in the way I do that, for example, is I say, no, I'm not going to give you money. But you know what? How about we go down to the mission? Let's grab a bite to eat and grab a coffee. They got lots of room to sit there inside and outside, and let's talk about what's going on. I'm a great listener. I'm willing to hear you. Show someone that you care. But be ever mindful that we are looking to them in a consciously mindful state to understand what help must truly be given. Now, and Kelly's gone over this one with me as well. How do we choose when to help? How do you know when it is the right time to help? And I've always said this, you don't need to worry about that. If there's a question in your head, it is not the time to be helping. You will notice that any time the universe put someone in front of you because God was too busy and needed you to do his job or her job. And I love that. Just think about that one for a minute, okay? Imagine that God was too busy, so he sent you to do his work or her work today. If that's your mentality. So you're looking at that person, and in a mindful state, you are coming into an understanding of what help is truly needed. And it's a combination of listening to them and feeling beyond the words. And you will know instantly what it is you need to do. In the moments that we truly help, there is no thought. We simply find ourselves reaching out in some way. We were down at the Bin, which is our equivalent of a nursing auxiliary sort of second-hand store here in town. It's a lot of fun. A lot of people in town go there. We always meet the same crowds week after week. And it's a great little social meeting place to have a few laughs, too. I tend to really liven the place up when I go there because I get into it with the old ladies running the place. And they get right into it with me. It's really a lot of fun. But there was a woman there one day, and she was looking at a crib. And I looked at her, and I looked at the crib, and I said, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're not going to fit in that crib. And she laughed, and she said, well, no, actually, it was her daughter-in-law and son, and they were just having a baby. Hello, Cindy, how are you? Oh, you're allowed to be late. It's okay. And they had both just lost their jobs, and they were really struggling. And we had picked up this beautiful Greco playpen in perfect condition. It was a traveling playpen that collapsed and went into a nice little carrying case. And we picked it up thinking we needed it for the puppy. Well, we never did. So without even thinking about it, it just popped out of my mouth. Well, we've got this playpen. How about you just stop by and pick it up and give it to him? It just flowed out. I didn't think about it. I didn't have to wonder about it. I didn't have to mull over what I could do. It simply flowed out. You see, it is the nature of our being to help each other. It is. It's built in because we know ultimately there is no other. It's all this glorious one, and that is our nature to help. It is our nature to care for each other, to look out for each other. It is the egoic sense of self, and particularly this side of it, that actionable, busy, me side of it, that gets in the way. I love pulling these guys out, by the way. Best 62 cents I ever spent. Great teaching tool. Conscious help instead of unintentional harm. This plays right into the level of consciousness that we have in dealing with others. For example, are you helping your child by handing them $20 to go out to a movie on a Friday night when in reality what you really want is 2 hours of peace and quiet for you and your husband, or you and your wife, or you and your boyfriend or girlfriend, or just yourself? A lot of times we ask, well, is that actually helping the child? There was an incident with one of our friends where she had said to us, well, my boy will not get to do this amazing event with me unless he goes out and finds some work and can pay for it. And of course he didn't, and she took him and paid for the event anyways. Did that help him? Did that serve him? What did the child learn from that? So let's get down to the core of how we help our children. And then we're going to come back to addicts and other people whose minds are not in a perfect state. Okay? And believe me, the human race, our mind is not in the perfect state most of the time. So how do we help our children? You know, and we talked about this with Sharon quite a bit yesterday too. And you know, Kelly had chimed in that she sees pockets of people who are, you know, trying to raise conscious children. And I said, yeah, I recognize that. But in a society, in a world where everything is geared in opposite direction to that, the speed with which that is having an effect on our society is almost non-existent. It's very minimal. You know, when we look around the classrooms today, when we look at what children are doing, when we look at, and when I say children, we're not talking about the small groups and pockets here and there that are raising their children in conscious awareness. We're not talking about those people, and this is not a blame game. This is simply an observation of the facts of the situation. ADHD, depression, teen suicide, a disconnection from society and from each other and from nature are clear. They're all on the rise. How do we help? As individuals, as parents, we can do what we can to make room to actually interact with our children, to take them away from the screen and to interact with them, to show them that there's some more to life than what they find in that digital world. You know, the digital world is almost like an illusion within the illusion. It's like Maya within Maya. And we get mired in the illusion, and then we create another illusion, and we fall into that illusion too. No wonder the World Health Organization is starting to classify this as a mental illness. It doesn't matter whether you're a gamer, spending 8 or 10 hours a day on your screen, or whether you're spending 8 or 10 hours a day on the internet. It is becoming a mental illness. We have conditioned the human brain with this last generation of children coming up right now to be bombarded continuously with information. Continuous bombardment. You know, Kelly was trying to talk to our boy this morning about the Carlton Pearson movie Come Sunday, which came out on Netflix yesterday. And it's an awesome watch. Kelly really enjoyed it. She has a real personal connection with Oral Roberts University. She attended there herself. She went to Carlton's church. And she was trying to communicate this morning. And I mean, I was almost having an aneurysm listening to her for 10 minutes. And I said, finally, I just kind of cut her off. I said, honey, Daniel, who was sitting there doing the dishes, stopped hearing you minutes ago. And I said, come on, boy child, own up. And he did. He said, well, yeah, 2 or 3 minutes ago I stopped listening to you. And it's not that they want to, it's that their mind is no longer capable of that sustained attention span without it becoming bored quite quickly and wanting to move on to something new. And this is manifesting itself in all sorts of dysfunctions within children. And again, let's be clear, I'm not saying all children, not saying everybody. I'm saying this is the trend that is evident and observable within our school systems, within the classroom. The level of violence and dysfunction is growing to the point where there are a lot of teachers who are becoming afraid to step into the classrooms. We as a society, it's going to take more than just one of us. This is the thing. We need to revamp the way we live as a species on this planet. You know, and this was my point to our friend Sharon yesterday, is we are a species of, yeah, exactly. Many adults have come, yeah, Yeah, shortest. Absolutely. I mean, this is going on for a long time, and of course, adults mired in this digital world, their brains are changing as well. We are evolutionary. Nothing stays the same. Teachers are trying their best, of course they are, but we are a species that loves to fight symptoms. We love to apply band-aids. You know, we'll spend $200,000 to build a suicide fence on a bridge as we cut the funding to the suicide hotline. Symptoms. Well, people are jumping off the bridge. Put up a fence to stop them from jumping off the bridge. Incidentally, those fences don't stop people, they just make it more difficult. And my question is always, well, you know, if the symptom is people jumping off a bridge, if people are willing to kill themselves over their lifestyles and over the way they're living, what are we as a society doing wrong? Why do we never ask those questions? You know, perhaps our friend yesterday was right. Perhaps the blame does rest slowly or fully on all of our shoulders. But it's not blame. It's responsibility, though. You know, any parent today, any person today can do a minimal amount of research. And Kelly, maybe you hit the answer on the head, you know. Better to live a convenient lie than to face an inconvenient truth. And of course, you know, it all starts in our world with the money issue. It all boils down to money. We worship that God above all other gods. And it doesn't matter whether you're sitting in the Catholic Church in Rome or the Baptist Church here in Vernon. It doesn't matter. You may proclaim to worship some entity sitting on a cross or some man-made version, but you don't. What you worship first and foremost is the cash that you perceive you need to live your existence. That cash trumps everything. Sorry, I said the word by accident. It wasn't relating to the president. It does. Cash trumps everything, and we've allowed the excuse that we can't afford it to eat us up inside on everything from the way we live our lives to the way we deal with our children to the way we choose to buy things. I mean, we live on credit. Why? We live on credit because we think we need it now, and that now is never satisfying. You know, I was out of that so long ago. I mean, I was like everyone else when I was young, you know, so okay, I needed a new sports car. Boy, that new sports car caused a lot of pain. It did. I think I racked up $2,000 equivalent, because I was over in Europe at the time. At the time, it would have been, 20,000 francs, because it was even before the euro. Yes, I'm that old. Worth of speeding tickets. And the car was worth about equivalent of 60,000 US dollars. So I was worried about the thing all the time. When you're in Paris and you have an expensive car, you know, have you ever seen the way people park in Europe? You'll notice everyone has big rubbery bumpers. And there's a good reason. Because when you park, you just kind of push your way in. You're banging and bumping, and no one cares. It's quite normal. There's kind of a level to which you can do it at, but yeah, it was tough. The car brought pain. This is the same with a lot of the things in our lives, and we do it because we have put, as a society, we have put the quest for objects external to ourselves to bring happiness. And you know, this is what I said to both Kelly and Sharon when we were talking yesterday. I said, isn't it funny that despite the fact that our society sells you the idea that in order to be successful, in order to make it, you have to have a big house and you have to have a high-powered job and a fancy car and go on vacations every year and have a big 401k or retirement plan or whatever this is, and those people we never mention in our history. We don't revere those people. Somehow, some way, at a deeper level, we revere exactly the opposite of what we're told is our measure of success. We revere Christ. We revere Gandhi. We revere Muhammad. We revere Sathya Sai Baba. We revere Yogananda. We revere the numerous Babajis that have showed up, the Buddha. None of those people would have measured up to our societal definition of success by any means. As a matter of fact, by our societal definition of success, they were all failures in one way or another. What did Christ own? What did Gandhi build? How big was Buddha's house? How many sports cars did Muhammad drive? Did he have a garage with 10 sports cars? And 20 girls waiting in a hot tub for him? No. We know what real success is. At some subconscious, at some underlying, every expensive car we have owned was stolen 1-3 times. Stop buying expensive cars. Or if you do, take a baseball bat to it right away and mess it up a little bit. Then no one will want it. Spray paint it. Where was I? I lost my trend of thought. Okay, let's go back to this. So we do know subconsciously underneath, right? We know what real success is, what honest success is. And as Jennifer says, when you get over that mindset, you live simply and you live so happy. You have gratitude for the littlest things. And let's be clear, when Kelly says that she had a fleet of cars here, a dozen of them, that was with her ex.
Yeah.
I am not that kind of guy. I came into Kelly's life with 3 little boxes that fit in the back of her car, and to be honest, those 3 boxes are more than I usually own. My life is usually contained within a backpack. And quite frankly, I love it that way. It's very freeing. So we know what success is. We know what honest success is. We revere the opposite of what we measure our success in society by. We see and hear the words of every single person who has somehow made it according to society. Jim Carrey being a prime example. And you listen to what Jim Carrey says, and he says, you know what? I would give all this money and fame to anyone just so they could realize it has nothing to do with being happy.
Yeah.
You know, apparently Kelly's still kind of in the Black Baptist Church mentality. She's doing her little hallelujahs over in the corner, waving her arms. How do we help our children? Yes, you can work individually with your children. I'm not saying don't do that, but what I am saying is that we really need to stand up. I mean, we really need to stand up as a people, you know, and I have it in my heart that we can do it without the dogma. Exactly. Yeah. I'll have to do that one time. I can pull off a really good Baptist fiery preacher routine. Glory, hallelujah. We'll do it one day. It'll be fun. I'll give a fiery sermon on how you're all going straight to hell. Let me know if you ever find the place. You know, I'm curious, actually. So, okay, we got to continue on with the next subject here. It's, like I said, the energy's a little wacky, so it's not my fault. It's just been wigging me out the last couple of days. It's been strange. I mean, I haven't bit anyone, but I've been kind of prowling around at night outside and growling a little more than usual, and you know, it's it's fun. It really is. So we know what success is, and the true success that we need to communicate to our children. You know, I guess if there's one thing we can communicate, is the knowledge that no matter what society tells them, they must make up their own minds. They must awaken enough to see what is around them. And granted, there's not a lot of parents who are in that state. And what can we do as people who are consciously awakening, as we are growing in awareness? We have to start, as I said, working on creating that which we wish to see. You know, Cindy, you got a really good sense of humor. That's just great. Yeah, I think I stepped on Kelly's tongue yesterday, actually. So, how do we wake our species up? You know, I always come back to this. Every perceived problem in our society, in the way we choose to live, we can turn those into strength. We can take the best out of this technological horror we've created, and we can choose to put the rest behind us. We can choose to make the future of our species, our children, a much higher priority than we do today. And we can do that by being the example. We can do that by speaking out. We can do that by supporting teachers, supporting those who would involve themselves in the care for our children. And as so many here have said today, perhaps consider downsizing a little bit. Perhaps consider not needing so much stuff if you can trade that off for time with those young, beautiful beings. You know, if we can look at our children and realize that they are powerful spiritual beings here having a human experience, look past our false concept that they are somehow less and little and therefore not the same as we are in some way, or not as good as we are, or not capable yet, and give them the freedom and opportunity to expand and express it. That's what I want for everyone's children. Why? Because I'm going to be one of those children again, and so will you. How do we help? Let's start by convincing the rest of the world of the truth of reincarnation, that indeed your child today may be one of your distant relatives. And your neighbor who's expecting a baby next year or in 6 months, whatever the case may be having the reincarnation of one of your relatives as well. The understanding that we want this planet for us all to keep coming back to have greater and greater and more joyful and more expansive and more evolutionary experiences. Has society gone too far from being realistic about how to live in an awakened state? And this is always the question. Are we too asleep to wake up? And if you look back in history, okay, this is the historical cycle that we've lived over and over and over again. As soon as we moved past traveling kind of tribal communities where we would follow the seasons, and we were nomadic. We were always on the move. We were always, in tune with what was going on in the seasons and in tune with what was going on with nature. As soon as we began to move past that point, we began to lose the ability to wake up. If you look at a First Nations tribe, like a band of Mohawk, for example, in the 1600s, those people were living in total harmony with nature. They were living in an awakened state. Our banding together has caused this collective sleep. That's why when you go to a really big city, you'll notice that not a lot of people will look at you. Not a lot of people will smile at you. Some of them will shy away if you smile at them, and you barely ever get a good conversation. Whereas in Armstrong here, there's only, like I said, 5,000 people, and it's fairly spread out because it's a farming community. When you go walking on the little 4-kilometer kind of loop of Armstrong, you're going to run into lots of people. You're going to be stopping. You're going to be chit-chatting. You're going to be having some laughs and some conversation. At a bare minimum, you're going to have smiles and hellos. The reason this ceases to happen in the city, of course, is that concrete itself is one of the best retainers of negative vibratory states. Concrete literally holds a negative vibration within it. There's something about the calcium and the limestone that literally retains that vibration, and that vibration, that negative vibratory state, builds within that. I mean, we've come to the point now where science has even began to prove that living beside a major highway with all the gas fumes and everything else going on is increasing Alzheimer's and other age-related diseases. The negative environment that a large city creates begins to fold back on itself. It begins to roll over on itself and roll over everyone involved. And what happens is, before people are even consciously aware of it, they're living in a depressed state. They're living where the very environment they are in is pulling them down into unconsciousness, is helping keep them in that negative state, is helping keep them focused on their egos, the false sense of self. And yes, Jennifer, we must be the example. Being the example is truly all we have. All the talk in the world, no matter how many times any of us talk to other people, being the example is the true experience we offer to others. Well, rock is natural, and rock is not the same. There's something that happens in the concrete process that it like, all I can tell you is this, is I've had the opportunity to visit some of the German internment camps, including the one at Auschwitz. And when you walk in there, as soon as you pass through the cinder block, the concrete cinder block door opening, you are inundated. Like, honestly, it almost made me ill, and it did make some people ill. The leftover negative vibration that still the resident in those buildings is palpable. I watched a crowd of tourists, myself included, a lot of them who were talking and energetic, literally all watched their faces and the silence, the awful silence that pervaded the room as we all walked into one of the gas chambers. Even the most sleeping person there was affected by it. The most unconscious person was affected by it. And yes, Jennifer, you're right. Grounding is important. Absolutely. If you live in a big city, grounding is one of the best ways to shed that. And we perform grounding very simply. Take your socks off, take your shoes off, and find some nice earth to stand in. Stand on some grass. Walk in the woods with bare feet. Reconnect. We're all kind of like little energy batteries, mobile ones, and the earth is like our recharge center. It's the giant recharge station. And the more you take your shoes and socks off, the more you touch the ground, the more you touch the earth, the more connected you become, the more the natural the one thing this planet does that many people are blissfully unaware of is it transmutes negative energy by the bucket load. Every single moment, it's transmuting that negative energy. It's pulling the earth is working overtime as a loving, conscious entity to transmute that negative energy that we are creating and give us the opportunity in every minute to awaken, to awaken, to awaken. We obviously can't change our concrete jungles in the way they sit today, but we can start building new cities. We can start looking at models like Zeitgeist. We can start looking at resource economies when we no longer worship the dollar bill. We all know what's important. The problem is it usually takes losing what's important for us to remember. The future of our species is assured. Okay? You don't have to worry about that. The future of us as magnificent, powerful beings is never in doubt. Whether or not planet Earth will be a place we can still all come and play, we'll have to see over time. The choice is ours. I want to talk a little bit about addicts here too, and you know the word addict. My shoes are grounded if I cannot go barefooted. Yeah, Jennifer, you're absolutely right. You know, especially if you get shoes that are made out of natural materials, you can actually have that grounding while wearing a shoe or a moccasin as well. Absolutely. Try to stick to natural materials, so not synthetics. Synthetics tend to dampen the grounding a little bit. When we talk about addicts, you know, we have to understand that we are all addicts in some way. All of us. That sense of self, our mind has the ability to become addicted. And really, what is addiction? It's liking what it's getting and wants more of it. The problem is when that addiction becomes dysfunctional. You know, you can be addicted to exercise and exercise too much, i.e. marathon women runners who are no longer having their periods at 25 years old. You can be addicted to good food and let that become dysfunctional to the point where you are mortally wounded if anyone offered you a cookie. You could be addicted to drugs. You can be addicted to alcohol. You can be addicted to self-punishment. The list is endless. And Cindy, I'm in the same boat as you. I'm a sugarholic. I love my little Mike Ikes. My little Mike and Ikes, just love them. I'll eat a whole damn box of them in a heartbeat. What is it about addiction then? Do we have the ability to know we need help? And I would say this is what happens in addiction is you spend most of your time in an unconscious dreaming state with periodic periods of lucidity between your next and last hit of whatever it is. Doesn't matter whether it's food or drugs or alcohol, anything. We become lucid just before we go for that next hit. There's a moment of awareness where we can catch ourselves, where we can understand that we really need help. And we tend to beat up against that which we perceive as our addictions. We tend to push it away from ourselves instead of addressing it, instead of looking at it and saying, what is it that we feel we're getting from it? And of course, when you're addicted to things that are going to alter your mind, in most of your existence, you're probably not going to be aware enough to understand the level of help you really need to get. And it's going to be hard to find. Look at us as a species, okay? We are addicted to money. We are addicted to objects. We are addicted to this never-ending search outside ourselves for more. Why? Because we're trying to fill a perceived hole in ourselves. And that hole can never be filled outside of you. Ever. We are all addicted. Do we want to raise our children with the same addiction? And it's not easy. I had 3 years with Danny, from ages just turning 13 up until he hit 16, and it was too late. He was, and we saw progress, and then the totally unconscious majority of his family subsumed him into that side of it. It literally was like Star Wars, welcome to the dark side, we have better cookies. Yeah. And he went for the better cookies. And of course it's not the dark side and it's not the light side. It's just more unconscious, more time needed, less unconscious, more awakening happening. How do we help? We help, as Jennifer said, be the example. Be the example to your children. Be willing to turn off those screens. Be willing to engage them. Be willing to engage everyone around you. Be willing to speak your truth even if your voice is trembling. And always, always remember that all of us want to come back here. All of us do. This is a really fun planet to be on. The one thing about humans, and you don't see a lot of this in the rest of the known universe, okay, is we have the capacity for this huge sway of emotional states and limitless imaginations. Many other races in our universe are much more toned down in their nature. There's a real gift in being human. We have the ability to create so much. We need to start doing so consciously, not for our sakes, but for the sakes of our returning selves. for the sakes of our future, for the sake of our children, for the sake of our grandchildren and their grandchildren and their grandchildren. We must choose in every moment and every day, I dare say, to fight the good fight. But it's not a fight. It's choosing the higher road, looking at what's happening, looking at the negativity around us, and saying, what is the positive opposite of that, and work towards that. That's how we help our children. That's how we help ourselves. That's how we help each other. Again, we have to stop enabling harmful behavior. Having children attached to screens 8 or 10 hours a day is doing harm. We must stop enabling it. Our children are indeed information junkies. They have become addicted to the point where if they can't have that steady stream coming in, many times they'll just go to sleep out of boredom. We must start treating and looking at what's happening with our children in these terms, in terms of harmful behavior. Who? Harmful to themselves and harmful to the good of the whole. And we must recognize the addiction. I still struggle with the idea of wanting to come back here. Been there, done that. Trust me, in about 1,000 years of goofing off on the other side, which, is no time at all, of course, you're going to want to come back. Here we suffer from a false point of view that there's actually, something severely messed up about this place. And there is, but it's meant to be that way right now. And it's perfect because it's showing us all. It's, the more the suffering goes, the more the opportunity grows for us to wake up. Everything comes in this amazing dichotomy in this universe. So when you feel that 50% happiness, be prepared to feel the 50% sadness times too. And relish either one of them. That's how we help our children. We recognize and we cease to enable harmful behavior. We recognize that they have become a type of addict and that they must be weaned off from that constant bombardment. We have to be mindful of the help that our children truly need, and what they truly need is guidance. What they truly need is your open awareness and your presence. Choosing how to help, choosing when to help, don't worry about it. You'll know. When you get out of your head, you will know. You will find yourself acting out of compassion and love and empathy, and your mind will be playing catch up to the actions you're already involved in, and that's when you know it's perfect. It's just what it needs to be. Conscious help instead of unintentional harm. What does this mean to us? It means sometimes we'll pull Danny away from that computer or take it away from him because we recognize that he is unintentionally doing harm to himself in the process. I've said this to a number of parents, and a lot of them don't agree with that, okay? But, you're not here to be your kid's best buddy. You're not here to be their bosom pal. You are here to prepare an infinitely powerful spiritual being for its own journey of evolution. And as long as you come from that mindset, you can never, ever fail. Ever. I absolutely love doing these, and I appreciate all the comments, and I appreciate the support and the love in return that we feel we receive from all of you. We have a big lineup tomorrow for Sunday. The Sunday 1 o'clock should be phenomenal. We have a whole list of subjects, everything from CERN. And, you know, it was really funny that someone brought CERN up. And I am not going to talk about it deeply today. But if you were to look on the Atlas experiment plaque, I'm there on it. And we're going to talk about the Atlas experiment and my very tiny, minuscule, yet important role in the creation of that, and a little piece of work I did with MIT a number of years ago. It is, Cindy does say, yes, I made that mistake of thinking it could be my kid's friend. Big mistake. Yeah, I mean, we are here to enable another powerful spiritual being to have their journey. And as I said to Kelly, we have to stop putting our old ways on them. You know, in the school system teaches them the same stuff they taught us. I mean, it's that same picture of the Mayflower, that same coloring page from 50 years ago, they're handing to my kid today. We haven't put our priorities right. And we need to get them straightened out. And I believe we can. I believe there's always hope. I believe there's always hope. Much love to you all. Namaste. I do hope to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. we'll be on the Help Awaken page for an answer, or for 1 hour. And on that page, if there's no one there, I'll typically talk for about half an hour and then shut it down. If there are people there who genuinely have some issues and need some help, please come on by for that one. And of course, at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's going to be the big one. We're going to be talking about CERN, signs and synchronicity. There's a whole list, anyways, and I have all my little slides prepared, and it should be a real blast. So I do hope to see you all then. Much love. Namaste. Have a wonderful Saturday. And I hope that we've given you something to think about again today. Take care.